So my name is James Fox Higgins. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Rational Rise, which is a very new, very small fry YouTube and website. We were a bunch of mates who got together 9 months ago with a shared passion for philosophy and a curiosity about politics and psychology and the arts. And we started getting together regularly to have conversations, and after a short time we decided, why aren't we rolling a camera and sharing this? There may be some value in this for people. And as we started to share it, we found that there were people interested. Some of our controversial conversations got a few spikes in our hits, but we're still in our very formative months, and we're having a great time of it. But we're really grateful and humbled to be here as part of this panel, which has only happened because John Humphreys found our YouTube channel and liked what we were doing and asked us to come here and represent a panel on the alternative media. There are lots of people I can see in the audience who are also involved in independent, self-funded, free thought projects online. So I don't think we by any means represent the whole spectrum. There are also some absolute alternative media giants here at the conference. So I'm humbled and honoured to be up here speaking to you guys, and I've had the pleasure of speaking to some of those giants while here and trying to gain what wisdom I can from them. We've got a few speakers who are joining us. So Sven here is my compatriot in The Rational Rise, and we have trudiltom, who is an independent YouTube content creator and a very rigorous philosopher and student of economy. And we have with us, for the first time with a human face, we have Scott Crow, who is the independent man, who has quite a large following. And from New Zealand, we have Duchamp, who also creates some very entertaining and humorous and informative videos on politics and philosophy and economy. We're all coming at it from a different angle, but one thing I've found at Friedman so far is that all of us are coming at the ideas of freedom from different angles, and we all have different strengths and abilities, and the alternative media is such an opportunity for all of us to share our ideas in our own unique ways and have direct access to an audience. First up, I'm going to call my friend Sven to come up here and tell us a little bit more about what we do and what got us into it.
Wow, I'm super nervous. This is very different from just sitting in your bedroom or your car and talking in front of a camera. So yeah, I'm here representing the alternative folk. I've got my dreadlocks here. I guess I'm the token hippie at the conference today. So it probably needn't be said that I'm not an academic. I have 0 state-sanctioned credentials in this area. I'm a business owner and a father, and any time that I devote to the issues of liberty, I'm doing in my spare time. I've never been to a conference like this. I don't go to a lot of gala dinners, so it's a whole new world for me. But actually, this is the most sane people I've ever seen gathered together in one place. So thank you, everyone. So just definitions. What is alternative media? Alternative to what? It's been given many names: mainstream, corporate media, legacy media, the dino media, the lamestream media. Roughly speaking, we're talking about corporate-controlled TV, radio, newspapers. So personally, I haven't even owned a TV for over 10 years. I haven't had one in my house. I never read newspapers. I never listened to radio. My musical tastes are somewhat non-standard also. So one of the things I heard recently is a statistic that only about 40% of Americans read at least one book in the year 2015. That means that about 60% of people did not read any books. So you could almost say at this point that books are alternative media. I, however, am a reader. I love my gritty, dark science fiction, and one of the things we do on our channel is we do reviews of sci-fi novels and movies from a philosophical perspective. However, with the encouragement of one Jordan B. Peterson, who some of you may know, I'm currently making my way through the Gulag Archipelago. So that's a bit of light bedtime reading. So begs the question, is the Gulag Archipelago, is that alternative media? It's a very vanishingly small part of the population who read that kind of stuff. Although I've heard it's mandatory reading for Russian students in high school, which is impressive. But the question I come back to again and again is, what makes someone seek out non-standard information sources? So we know that people tend to vote their psychological temperament. people high in the trait agreeableness are more likely to uncritically accept whatever information is put in front of them, while other people, like me, seem to have an innately high degree of skepticism. And maybe the jury is still out on whether this is nurture or nature, though I think most likely it's a combination of both. I know for me, I learned a deep distrust of institutions and authorities on my journey through the public education system. But then again, perhaps my genetics predisposed me to this. But I also have this combative streak. I love the debate. I love the fight. I'm the one who runs towards the fire. And maybe some of you in this room share this with me. Anyway, one of my on-the-side passion projects are these truth tags. Can you hold some of those up? These are philosophical bumper stickers you may have seen around, weapons of mass instruction, I like to call them, and thanks to everyone who's bought some over the weekend. This is the first attempt at monetizing our content. I'm sure we'll get to the recent YouTube demonetization that's affected some of our fellow panelists. In any case, what I want to leave you with from this first section is encapsulated in one of my tags, and that is that in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. Because some people would rather not know. Some people don't value truth, they don't value principles, they don't have the inclination nor any incentive to do the hard work, to dig deep and think for themselves. And to me, this is at the very heart of libertarian philosophy. It's self-reliance, self-sufficiency, because we don't need gatekeepers. We don't need the people in the ivory towers to hand down their knowledge to us. We have the technology. So take personal responsibility for your media consumption. Think critically of what you're consuming. Think for yourself and draw your own conclusions. Remember, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. So I'll pass it on to Dylan now. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys. One thing I want to share with you is that as independent YouTubers and just regular guys who hang out and talk about stuff, we decided to come at this panel as rugged individualists. And the plan was to sort of sit up here at the table with lots of microphones and just like kick back and shoot the shit and not have any kind of real structure to it other than a conversation that you guys could be part of. For technical reasons, we need to do it this way. But one thing I'm excited to introduce, one person I'm excited to introduce to you for the first time in person is Scott, who is independent man. He's got quite a large following on YouTube, and he's going to get up here and we're going to have a bit of a back and forth together because that's how we plan to do it. So please give it up for Scott Crow, the independent man.
Thanks for coming to my outing.
So what I wanted to get you to share with everyone here and with me for my own curiosity is a bit of the story of how you came to get involved with YouTube media content. Like, what was the bugbear that drove you to come up and speak out as you did?
Who knows about? Sorry. Who knows about Gamergate? Who doesn't know about Gamergate? Okay. I'll try and break it down really quickly. I think it was about 2013. A bunch of feminists and social justice warriors decided to attack the gaming community. I'm not close enough. The gaming community, both the users and the producers of games. They came in and told them they're a bunch of misogynists, that the female characters are sexualized, and that they're all horrible people and they need to go back to the drawing board and remake their games. And the gamers basically said, piss off. But the interesting part was that the media actually took the side of the social justice warriors and turned on the gamers. But it created this real battle. And the gamers stood by, and I think it's fair to say that they won that battle. And so that's what lured me into this world of YouTube, because there's a lot of people on YouTube creating videos about this sort of battle that was going on. And people like Thunderfoot, some of you may know, making videos about Anita Sarkeesian, who was the main protagonist there, or one of them. And so that lured me in, and I found myself, just watching more and more YouTube, and I thought, I can do this kind of stuff. But whilst I was doing this, I was living in Japan at the time. So most of the things that I was viewing was coming out of the United States. So when I actually just moved back to Australia in February 2016 after being overseas for 15 years, and I thought maybe naively that Australia had passed under the radar and maybe we hadn't been infected with this social justice, cultural Marxism. And I come back and, Jesus, was I disappointed. Absolutely terrifying. So I came back in February last year. I watched a couple of episodes of Q&A and I was done. I was sold. I had to get into this YouTube thing. So I'd been thinking it over, and it wasn't until I got back here and saw the situation in Australia and thought, yeah, I've just got to get into the debate. That's all. Just got to put stuff out there and see what happens.
I think it's funny. I think frustration with Q&A was what drove us to make our first video too, ironically. So where did you start? What topics did you broach first, and where did you find your first sort of spike in popularity came from?
I think it was from memory. If I go back to the first video, it was Michaelia Cash on Q&A, nodding her head in agreement with Mia Friedman on they were basically bullying Michaelia Cash into saying that she was a feminist. They were talking about the wage gap, domestic violence, the big three of feminism: wage gap, domestic violence is a pervasive epidemic, and rape culture, basically. The big three. I mean, feminism is the hallmark of fake news. Those three things alone. So yeah, that was it. And I think I have a background in finance a long time ago. I was a teacher in Japan, but I have a background in finance. And what I thought I could bring to it was just having a look at the data. I mean, it's so easy. You just go to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, download the domestic violence data and have a look at it. There is no epidemic. It's been flat. From the Personal Safety Survey from 2005 to 2012, it hasn't moved. Before that, it's actually been coming down. Violence in general has been coming down. The idea that it's pervasive across society, it's the same in Double Bay as it is in Moree, is just absolutely absurd. Again, the same statistics bear all that out. So I thought that what I could bring to YouTube was a bit of an analytical bent, show the statistics, and just show that it's, they're just pushing a narrative, and it's fear mongering. It's the victim mentality, and that's just trying to bring some rigour to the debate.
Now, I know that you've been able to successfully monetize your platform, but the social justice cancer has leaked into YouTube quite recently, I think you could share with the audience a bit of your experience with that.
I don't know how many people following this very closely. The PewDiePie. Okay, we know. So PewDiePie put out a few videos that had some, shall we say, anti-Semitic imagery in him, but PewDiePie is a comedian, essentially. So it was all satire, and of course the Wall Street Journal jumped on it and said, look at this hate, it's hate videos, and it's being, all these large corporations are running their ads against them. And so all these large corporations have boycotted YouTube, pulled all their ads off until you get rid of the hate speech. So YouTube's been going through and systematically cleaning up, and they're just sidelining anything that's vaguely controversial or sensitive. So anything in the politics realm, anything sort of culture wars stuff, all of that stuff's being, you can't monetize your content. You can still put it up, but you can't make any money off it. So that's kicked a lot of YouTube channels in the guts, but I think in some ways it's forcing people to innovate and look for other ways to make money. So there's a positive and a negative to it, but YouTube is still the only game in town really for monetizing on platforms.
Minds.com.
Yeah, they still won't let me monetize on there. I've sent them hundreds of messages and can't get anything.
Well, that'll be a growing platform, I think. And as you said, when we meet the resistance of the mainstream or the corporate interests or whatever it is that try to prevent us from having a platform with which to freely exchange ideas, that's when we're forced to innovate. And the phrase has been kicked around quite a bit at the conference this weekend, and I think I've heard it first from Nick Gillespie on Friday night, was this permissionless innovation. We're seeing it work so well for other organisations, and maybe now's the time for people in the alternative media and technologists to come together and create new platforms that aren't going to be infected by the SJW cancer. Cool. All right. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, mate.
Please put your hands together for Scott, independent man. So as you guys can see here, in part of my effort to do as little preparation as possible, I quickly crammed together a Photoshop image with our YouTube channel names. And I'm trying to twist your arm into, during this session, before you forget, if you've got your smartphone, hop on YouTube and subscribe. We're trying to grow our platforms and we'd love to interact with you. Also, on the Rational Rise, and I'm sure it's probably the case for the other people on the panel, we're really interested in having conversations with people. We're starting to have debates and discussions via Skype with just about anyone who's interested in coming on our platform. So if you've got any objections to anything we've said there or here, or anything you want to add to it, or anything you want to discuss at all, get in touch with us, and we'd love to have you on. And now, on that note, I'm going to invite up my good friend Dylan Thomas, trudiltom. He's going to come and have a chat with us about his experience as a YouTube content creator. Now, as I mentioned before, Dylan is coming at YouTube from a much more rigorous research and I think academic background. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about where you're coming from in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I have no academic experience. I'm a first year uni student. I just like to read philosophy and economics and these kind of things. I'm nowhere near the ranks of other people. I just, I don't know, I just like reading. And yeah, I kind of, my journey into making YouTube is probably a reflection of how a lot of people kind of find the alternative media appealing. In that, when I've been a libertarian since I was probably about 18, and that was only a few years ago because I'm a millennial and quite young. And my first intuition as I made a mistake that Murray Rothbard made as well, in that he thought that we had common ground with the left, and he spent a lot of time on the left trying to try and share a platform with leftists, with anarcho-communists and other such radically Marxist ideas. And I kind of thought similarly, because I used to be on the left when I was in high school. And so I spent a lot of time in my first year at university speaking to people at Socialist Alternative and Solidarity, and I'd go to these things because I had in my head that because they had similar social views than me, that they must have similar principles, and I was greatly mistaken. I found out very quickly, just after the continuous attempts to offer basic economic truths and basic moral truths, to have them denied in the name, they might say in the name of progress, but I would say in the name of feelings, in the name of appeals to institutionalized systems of oppression that are inflammatory towards marginalized groups and other such rhetoric that is not really meaningful. So just time after time going to university, and every single person that would open their mouth just saying, I'm a Leninist, I'm a Marxist, I'm a social democrat, and never hearing any actual diversity of ideas, it just got very exhausting. So one day I went home after hearing news that Socialist Alternative had actually pushed a competing SRC member down a staircase for competing with them. I realized these people, I realized these people were animals. So I had to look. So I just went on photo booth on my Mac. I started speaking about something that was on my mind, and in this case it was a video by a propaganda outlet called Al Jazeera, and they had some gentleman on it speaking about how we need to get rid of the word terrorism from public discourse, not really because he had some way of making a more accurate and genuinely better understood version of what was going on, but because it would be awfully convenient for him to get rid of a thing that his group is disproportionately represented in. So I made a video responding to it, just saying, hey, I think you're wrong. And it became, and the appeal of alternative media, it kind of came at, I realized it then, and that we live at a time when a lot of ideas are suppressed not through debate and intellectual discourse, but through social ostracism and social punishment. And it's very difficult to and the alternative media serves as an outlet for people whose ideas transcend the kind of generic left-right spectrum of things, and people who have ideas that are honest and well-intentioned but are considered heresies, particularly by the left. The alternative media definitely offers an outlet for these people, and that's probably why it's so appealing. However, I think there's also problems with the alternative media, because when you create a market for different outlets, for a market for different people to come and have their opinion heard, you also create a market for confirmation bias. And that's another thing that you learn very quickly on YouTube, is that the problem with having this diversity of ideas is that people are less likely to hear ideas outside of their own, because they pick an outlet that reports the information on the world in a way that can consistently conform to their own worldview. And if you look at Google and you look at YouTube and Facebook, they have a mechanism that kind of enhances this, because we like confirmation bias. We may not cognitively agree with it, but it's just we feel that dopamine hit when our worldviews are confirmed, and we feel dissonant when they aren't confirmed. And YouTube and Facebook, that you have a feed, you have content that they throw at you, and they throw it at you in reference to what you have liked and what you have seen in the past. So very quickly, when you delve into the alternative media, you find yourself seeing everything you agree with and patting yourself on the back over and over again, because your worldview is being confirmed over and over again. And however, there is also another thing that makes everything a bit okay, which is that these markets, or I should say these different outlets, these different websites like Breitbart and the Daily Wire and the Young Turks, to use a left-wing example, they don't just. Sorry?
Breitbart's not left-wing.
No, I just said Young Turks is yeah. There's a. Sorry. There's a they don't just exist stationarily. They don't just exist in a vacuum. They compete with each other, and they compete on the grounds of persuasiveness, because unlike in the mainstream media, where there's a large amount of institutional power and ideas compete with each other based on how much funding they have, on YouTube, it's the viewer that determines what ideas are successful. And lucky enough for us, as us libertarians tend to be kind of persuasive. And on YouTube, it's very interesting, because the vast majority of different channels, if they're not libertarian economically, they certainly are culturally. If you look at the only real successful left-wing outlet that grows in subscribership is the Young Turks, and every single other outlet you can point out, whether it be Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, Stefan Molyneux, who are increasing hundreds of thousands of subscribers every few months. Every single one of them shares their ideas. So it seems that these culturally Marxist, regressive notions of policing everybody's speech and behavior have difficulty competing in a truly free market of ideas, and are reliant on some sort of institutional structure to silence opposition. So, yeah, it's wide open, and that's probably where, yeah.
Cool.
So,
Now, I should just note as well that Dylan is 20 years old, and I think that's extraordinary. He's got a really large platform on YouTube that's growing. He's got a big audience base. He's got fans here. When we arrived, people were coming up and saying, "I love your videos," and he blushed. It was quite nice to see. So yeah, that's what I love about the alternative media in all of the platforms that it's on, but particularly YouTube, is you've got a full spectrum of demographics being able to get up and share their ideas freely, and it's a real shame that is starting to be choked on that particular platform. But as always, we'll innovate and we'll find other ways. Now, speaking of innovation, from New Zealand we have Danny Duchamp, and this is a man who gets drunk and sits in his car with a camera rolling and makes some great videos. So he's also got a growing platform. Come on up, Danny. Give it up to Danny. So you've certainly taken a unique approach to your style, and I think style is such a huge factor in YouTube content creation. We each have our own style and approach. How did you come to decide to sit in your car with a bottle of wine and talk into a camera?
Well, the car was because I didn't want to make too much noise and annoy everyone. But making the video in the first place was, you'll never believe this, someone was wrong on the internet. And I had to do something about it. So I made a video response. Someone subscribed and said they liked it, so I kept doing it. The initial thing I responded to, by the way, was a group that's been touched on a couple of times, affectionately referred to as social justice warriors. And it was largely grew out of the Gamergate movement, which, a few people probably have already heard of that, and there was a quick rundown of it. But I just had a couple of headlines from around the time that I wanted to read out here. That'll give you sort of an idea of what the games journalism sphere was saying about gamers at the time, keeping in mind that this is simply in response to them asking for ethical standards in games journalism. Gamers don't have to be your audience. Gamers are over. It's dangerous to go alone, so why are gamers so angry? The end of gamers. Sexism, misogyny, and online attack. It's a horrible time to consider yourself a gamer. The death of gamers and the women who killed them. We might be witnessing the death of an identity. Gaming is leaving gamers behind. It goes on and on like this. There's an enormous list that I could have kept going with. I'd also like to point out that every single one of those was released on the same day. So these aren't just some specific ideologues in specific places who are trying to demonize a certain group. This is actually appears to be some kind of a coordinated thing, meaning that these different media sources have some sense of collusion with them. And I think that's kind of where alternative media comes in. With alternative media, you have a much more granular sort of approach to media. There's all of the different people won't necessarily know each other. They won't necessarily be in the same area. So there's a lot more opportunity to start breaking the mold and trying to do something a little bit different, not going along with the same narrative as your colleagues. And after a while of seeing that, I guess, eventually, and seeing that person who was wrong on the internet, I eventually just sort of cracked and I had to say something.
Now, one thing that I've noticed over this weekend, and Naomi Brockwell pointed it out quite rightly when she won her award last night, was that this bunch of people, libertarians, seem to be so light. Maybe it's particular to Australia, but there's a lightheartedness to the positions that we can take online, and you certainly embody that, even in your serious rants where you've sometimes scripted them or really thought them through, and they're quite cogent, but you bring a lightheartedness to it that I think is quite appealing when on the opposite side you've got a whole lot of shrieking that and a whole lot of seriousness, and a whole lot of those headlines really highlight just how miserable the other side can be on these topics. And I wanted to talk about the musical aspect that you have engaged with, and that's a movement as well in the free thought projects on YouTube.
So a couple of times, because I used to do a bit of professional musicking, I tried to develop a little bit of use of music in my videos, just making fun of someone with a parody song, things like that. And I think a lot of that lightheartedness does really help. It also speaks to what you heard before about the really different demographics that there are in sort of the online community. And it's worth noting that this isn't all necessarily libertarians, right? Like all of the people responding to like your social justice warrior types, they aren't all necessarily libertarians. But a common name that's given to them is actually cultural libertarian. Right? And it's not a huge jump to pull people over from cultural libertarian to real libertarian. If someone is already upset about like the underhanded tactics that some rabid feminists will use to try to get them deplatformed, the protests and things like that, instead of having a debate, getting them deplatformed, it's not a hard move to say, well, the ultimate form of deplatforming is when you start using government force to do that. And so I think that all of the different demographics that are in sort of that anti-social justice, Gamergate, alternative media, or even just social media sphere, they're all ripe for conversion to libertarianism.
Yeah, awesome. And I think on the topic of the music and the parody side of things, it reminds me of something that Judd Weiss said the other night, and I was lucky enough to spend some time with him and interview him yesterday and go a bit more deeply into it. But we talked about the cruciality for the libertarian movement of making it sexy, as he put it, but I think making it fun, making it engaging in a light way that brings more people on board, because we're not such a bunch of sourpuss, serious, sit around and bitch and moan and deplatform people. Yeah. We want to exchange ideas. We want to have fun in the process of doing it, and we want to be passionate about it. And I think all of us on this panel, we're little guys comparatively, but we're all doing it, and we're all coming from that place of this is something we're passionate about. We all have businesses and lives and families outside of this, so we just put in the time that we can. But it's a growing movement, and that we are putting our passion into something on a whim and then getting invited to come along to an event like this, which is full of so many like-minded people. It's just absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you guys. I want to pass over to Sven one more time for his closing notes, and then we might open it up for some questions and answers. I'm probably supposed to be using the Hoover app to do that, but as I said, we're rugged individualists. We're just going off script and doing it our way. So we've got some hand mics, and if anyone has a question, just put your hand up and I'll bring a mic out and let us know who you want to speak to, and I can repeat the question into the recording microphone here. But yeah, Sven, take it away, my friend. Oh, great.
All right, we're going to try this one off the cuff. So, like I said, I haven't had a TV in 10 years, so all my media consumption pretty much has been YouTube. And I've gained so much in that, like it's why I have the beliefs I have today. And there's this idea that, like the tree of knowledge that we have in humanity, and there's these mighty people, like we stand on the shoulders of giants, and maybe Friedman here, he's like the trunk of this tree, but there's space for the people, for the little branches and the little leaves, and to pass that message on. And I really believe that knowledge confers responsibility, and so it's your duty, and that's how we show our gratitude, because, thank you to these people that give us this knowledge, and we need to pass it forward. Then also, again, I've tried to encapsulate these sort of ideas in my bumper stickers, and one of them is study, practice, teach. And I'm at the beginning of that. I'm studying. The practice is making these videos, writing the scripts. Another one from Jordan Peterson is that we write to know what we think. And I listen to this stuff, and it lights me up, and I agree with the stuff, but it's another matter entirely to be able to communicate those things. And so the other thing is that it got touched on by Dylan. The tag was in the age of information, ignorance is a choice, but flip it around, in the age of information, where does that leave us? And again, that comes back to the responsibility that we all have is to do our own research and think for ourselves and draw our own conclusions. It's also a paradox of the fact that we have infinite choice, with there's so many channels out there, but we still end up in our own little bubbles. It's that confirmation bias thing. So, yeah, and I found it amazing talking to people here over the weekend, and I consider myself, like I said, I just consume like 8 hours of YouTube content a day. You can't get to the bottom of it, and yet I have these conversations with people, and I ask them, who are your sources, who are you into, and they list off 10 YouTube channels that I've never even heard of that are their main thing, the best people. So, yeah, I really just want to leave you people with, the other one is courage is contagious, and Ezra Levant was here, which was kind of mind-blowing for me. He's sort of my hero, and if you haven't seen the What Is My Intent video, wow. Okay. So go. Yeah, thank you. And courage is contagious. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to stand up in a room full of people, and yeah, so thanks, Ezra. But yeah, check out his video, like What Is My Intent, you can find on YouTube, and just light other people's fires. That's what we're here to do, and yeah, I'm just so excited over this weekend, getting pretty emotional now. So yeah, thank you everyone. And, yeah.
This has been, for Sven and I in particular, an incredible cathartic experience, because we only met about 10 months ago, or maybe roughly a year ago. 9 months ago, we said, hey, let's put some things up on YouTube and see what happens. And then here we are now with, I think, the most awesome bunch of people in the country and a lot of awesome people from overseas. So thank you so much. Now, me being slack, you guys are not. You've been well trained over the weekend, and there are some questions up on the Hoover app. So I'm going to read out some of these. The first one is from Nick, and his question was, are you worried about being doxxed? Now, I'll answer that one. There are some that we can pass on, and the answer is yes. Okay, so no. The thing about, it does trouble me, the more our platform grows. Well, what's doxing? Doxing is where your personal information, and sometimes including details like your address and that sort of thing, get shared by your ideological opponents online with a view to disrupting your life and shutting you down. It's just another form of deplatforming, and quite an aggressive one. And I'm a family man. I've got children. So it is something that concerns me. I want to be part of this fight, this battle of ideas. I want to be sharing my values and my ideas freely with the world, but there is a threat that if the other side are, well, Dylan described them as animals, and if they are animal enough to try to get involved in my personal life, it is a real worry. With the Rationalise and with Dylan, we did have a brief, short-lived experience of almost doxing, where I'm a musician by trade, so I spend a lot of time with people who are more on the left, and I can't help but share my ideas with them, and people ask me questions because they're like, oh, you know stuff, tell me about that, and then I hit them with something super controversial. So it's sort of well known that I'm a contrarian in my own scene. But yeah, we made a video where we were talking about a very controversial topic. We were ham-handed in the way we talked about it, and people in my music scene got wind of it and created a rebuttal video. But what followed from that rebuttal video was a chain of comments where people were threatening violence and being quite aggressive towards us in really wanting to boycott us from the industry and shut us down. They weren't willing to engage in a discussion of ideas, and we invited them to come on the show and talk about it. Like, yeah, maybe we're wrong. Let's talk about this. Let's go through the ideas together. They weren't willing to do that. They formed a mob and came upon us. And, our other compatriot, Rob, who couldn't be here this weekend, lost his job over it. But we found the silver lining very quickly. We're all free marketeers. We run our own businesses, and we put together a new band, and we're going to go in and compete and kick their asses. So we're not too worried about that. But this has happened to us where we have an audience of 500 subscribers on YouTube. So I do worry that as we grow, it could get worse. So I'm not sure how to deal with it other than day by day, just make sure I'm being careful and make sure I'm speaking clearly so that if I'm taken out of context, at least people can refer to the original statement and hopefully, use their better judgment. The next question is from Dom, and it's to Danny. His question is, what's the best way to get rid of communists? Deportation, re-education, or free helicopter rides? Anyone else want to answer the doxing question? We got a mic here. You got a mic there? I was called back. Yeah.
So, the helicopters, obviously. I did actually, before I jump to the helicopter question, want to say one thing about the doxing question, is that I've got the ultimate defense of doxing. I've had my real name and face on my YouTube channel since day one. Not everyone can do that.
And you live in a car, right?
And I live in a... No. But not everyone can do that. There's a lot of reasons that some people might not want to associate their face and name with some controversial opinions. But I do want to extol the virtues of it anyway. If you can do it, I think that seeing a real face and a real person espousing some positions that might be controversial, that someone else, that the person watching might hold as well, but not feel comfortable saying to anyone. If they see someone with a real face and name espousing those positions, it might make them feel more comfortable to express them themselves. So I'm not afraid of doxing because I don't need to be, and if at all possible, I think you should try to use your real face and name when you can. But of course, not everyone can do that.
What about helicopter rides?
Helicopter rides, I don't know. So you can't really get too much better than helicopter rides. I don't think I can expand upon that.
Yeah, all right, yeah. I think we're going to choose to take that question quite lightheartedly for good reason. The next question comes from Gennady Notawodigdo. I'm so sorry. I tried. I really tried. He says, I have a 12-year-old brother who now refuses to watch mainstream media and hence opts into watching YouTube channels as a source of news and entertainment. Explain why alternative media is so attractive to children of his age range. And I'm gonna get Dylan to come up and talk about this because I know that Dylan has a lot of younger people in his audience and is a young person himself. I'll get him up here because this is what the recording guys want. So Dylan, come up and let's talk about youth on YouTube a little. Did you catch the question?
So why is the alternative media
so attractive to children of the 12-year-old age range?
Well, I think it's because it's much more accessible to children. First of all, you can look at the demographics of your audience on YouTube, and my biggest demographic is actually, I believe, 30 to 40-year-olds, and my second biggest would be 20 to 30. So people actually under the age of 20 is smaller than people over the age of 60 for my own audience. And when it comes, I'm not sure that alternative media is necessarily, it's definitely more attractive to young people than the mainstream media because it's more vibrant, it's more creative, the ideas are more interesting. They're not espousing things that George Soros wants them to espouse, and
well, some of them maybe, but not all of them.
Some of them, the Young Turks maybe, but everyone. But yeah, and there's also a level. I think the level of creativity is a big one because in alternative media, there's just so much great content of people going out on the streets and innovating and constantly thriving to create better content. So, but and with that, there also comes its downside. Like there's a lot of demagoguery in the alternative media because young people like controversy and they like things that are edgy. So you have figures like Milo Yiannopoulos and people like Gavin McInnes and people of those who are great, but they
certainly controversial.
They're certainly controversial, and that's definitely very appealing. But and one of the great things about them is also that they create a lot of they made these ideas cool again. Because the thing about libertarians is we're not that cool, and a lot of people have kind of spoken about this, and they've done studies on this as well. That when it comes to the things that when it comes to like Jordan Peterson, for example, he's very famous for doing a study talking about the psychology of liberals and conservatives, and Jonathan Haidt has another one where which was very expansive, and they also look at the psychology behind libertarians, and libertarians have a much higher need for cognition, just to keep it brief, than both liberals and conservatives. So we're less likely to be empathetic and to be edgy and to try and reach out to people because we're very busy in modelling and logistics and creating ideas, which is helpful, but it's also it's not the whole picture. So that's one of the best things about alternative media for our platform, and figures like that who might seem like demigods at sometimes, but because they make it cool for millennials and people and university students. So yeah.
I'd also add to that the new media or the alternative media and platforms like YouTube are the first time in human history where the discourse is two ways, and young people want to get involved, and they can remix and make memes, and they can put up rebuttals at such a young age. The technology is readily available for it to be a conversation, not just an input of corporate sanctioned or government sanctioned ideas. So it's a very exciting time for young people. And the kids today, the 12-year-olds, are, if not the first, they're one of the first generations to grow up where they don't remember the time before broadband, I remember the time before the internet being in every house, but only just, and it's a different world to grow up in where the conversation is there from day one and you can be involved with it. So I think that's a very exciting aspect for young people.
Can we get an answer from the guy who just doxed himself about the doxing?
Okay, we'll come back to that because I want to get one more question. I do want to get Scott up for this next question. The question is from Dom, and he says, do you think the categorisation of being part of the manosphere or a men's right activist helps or hinders the injection of facts into the debate? It seems that people dismiss any analysis of the data showing the feminist conclusions are wrong just because the person presenting themselves seems to be a pro-men's rights person. Can you speak to that, Scott?
I think they're only discredited in leftist circles. I mean, it's the left that wants to categorise everybody. So, but I think if you speak honestly and present the data, in theory it shouldn't matter. And I think you need to be more forceful. I think Mark Latham had talked about what he calls civility conservatives, but I think you've got to get down in the mud and wrestle a bit with the pig. And you'll both get dirty, but you might end up liking it. And so I think I would not pay attention to labels. Just tell them, put your bigotry bingo card away, do away with the labels and just have a discussion and sorry, that's not an argument. Grab one of those stickers.
Truth tags.
Sorry, that's not an argument. So I don't think it's... Look, there are some people people here may have heard of the MGTOW movement. It's got a bad reputation. I'd say that label's probably not going to help you very much. But sorry, I don't think men's rights activists should deter you. That label. I wouldn't worry about labels. I mean, half the problem is labelling in itself. So ignore the labels, I say. And could I just say something on?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I was going to say something on the demographics of young people watching YouTube. I'm 43 years of age and 75% of my audience is younger than me. 20% of them are under 25, 60% are under 35. And so that's, I think, important for new media. That's where you've got to be. You have to be there if you want to win the hearts and minds of the young people. I think during the presidential election they said that the average age of a Fox News viewer was 68 years of age. And the other, I think CNN and the others were all around 60 to 65, something like that. So I don't know the reasons. These guys put the reasons there, but you've got to be there, I think, as a media organisation to reach the young people.
And the other question that came up for you was they wanted to hear from you on the doxing issue because it was said that you doxed yourself, but I consider doxing to be, the publication of sensitive personal information, not just your identity. But obviously, as somebody who's built your platform anonymously, and now at this event, we all know your face and name now, and that's going to change things for you. Are you worried about doxing henceforth?
No, not really. Actually, I saw anonymity as a bit of a weight. Actually, I'm glad to get rid of it. Initially, I did it because actually at the time I started my YouTube channel, there was a bit of doxing going on, quite a bit of it. Some of it got a bit nasty, like families threatened, not just the YouTuber themselves, but their families. And so I was a bit wary when I started because I didn't even know if I was going to do this full time. You put videos out there, you don't know if anyone's even going to look at it. So I thought, why not just stay anonymous, see what happens? I think now it's probably a liability to be anonymous. So I'm happy to be out. I'm not worried about it. I think, John, you said when people threaten you online, you send them your address and say, I'll be waiting for you. So that's not a bad strategy.
And I think the other thing worth noting in your case, Scott, is that now by revealing yourself, you are able to participate in events like this, and it's been awesome to meet you and talk to you over the last few days and have you here on the panel. And I think we should give Scott a round of applause for being available. Have we got any time for any more questions? If there's anyone who hasn't sent one in to the app? 15 more minutes. We've got 15. Oh, really? Yeah. All right. I thought we were an hour sort of thing. Okay, we've got a couple of questions. So, if the mic can go around, and I'll repeat it for the recording guys.
This isn't so much a question as a statement.
Oh, look out. You have 2 minutes.
I've been running a group blog for about 10 years. Counting Cats in Zanzibar, we have Americans, Brits and Australians contributing. I'd just like to welcome you all to the world of alternative media.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just the question's just in regards to confirmation bias that Danny raised. I sort of became very aware of this about 10, 15 years ago, and so ever since I've been sort of deliberately, if it's a sensitive issue, I buy the book of the guy who most vehemently disagrees with me and go through it. But I find it really challenging. It's like I read the Telegraph and the Sydney Morning Socialist and all this sort of stuff because I've got to get that balance. It's really important to me. But I find consistently most people don't do that, and that's on every side of the political debate, and I don't just think there's two. So I'm just curious about how with this alternative media, you can actually encourage people to not get suckered in by that bias and not get suckered in on your own.
Good question. From my experience, more as a viewer of the alternative media, I would say the best strategy for that is doing direct rebuttals, where you are presenting the opposing idea in full and responding to it. And then it becomes quite transparent what you're trying to do, and it makes it stay as a battle of ideas and not a cult of personality or those other things that can take off. So I think, the direct rebuttal approach helps. Did any of you guys want to get up and speak to that?
I have a brief
statement. Please.
I think the most valuable thing you can do to evade confirmation bias, not only as an exercise of evading it, but also growing as in the confidence of your own ideas if you're a libertarian, is to read Karl Marx. I would actually really encourage all of you to do so, which sounds kind of ironic, but it's just... Once you understand Marxism, you can kind of see where all bad ideas of the last 100 years kind of stem from. So, I would recommend it.
But less specifically, I think that's a great point that you raised about, it's up to each of us to police our own development of our ideas, and it's that responsibility we have in the age of information to not only find our tribe and find people who are saying things that resonate and that we agree with and we get our dopamine hit from, but to also challenge our ideas. Now, I don't know about all of these guys, but I know some of us from this panel have grown up as leftists. I grew up in northern New South Wales, in the Rainbow region, right, where everyone votes Greens, and it's it's offensive to do anything other than that. And I grew up in I went to public school, and it was a socialist indoctrination camp. And I would espouse those cliches like communism is the perfect ideal, but human nature is what prevents us from being able to achieve it because we're flawed and crap, as a species. And, so I really would repeat a lot of that crap, but I had no basis of knowledge to build it on. It was just the echo chamber I grew up in. And only 2 years ago, I was red-pilled and exposed myself to alternative information through the alternative media. And it was an emotionally painful process to realise how completely wrong my worldview was, to discover new ideas. But by breaking down my existing bias, I've then able to be much more flexible in the way I move through these ideas. So I don't like to label myself a libertarian or an anarcho-capitalist. I use labels very reluctantly because they're an answer, they're not a question, I like to follow truth wherever it leads. So if I have to choose a label, I'd say amateur philosopher, because that's the love of wisdom, and it means I'm seeking and pursuing wisdom. But it's up to everyone to police their own ideas and learning. And I think it'd be safe to say most people in the room here are able to step out of their confirmation bias quite a bit. Have we got much more time? Yeah, Danny, come on.
A couple points on that. One simple quick one. So I'd also say that if you do run any kind of alternative media source, if it's a blog or a YouTube channel, you probably started around one specific issue. Like you might have found tons of issues with feminism, and so you start talking about, these are all the issues with feminism. Don't be afraid to step out of that individual issue, because there'll be a lot of people following you for that issue, and then you can apply some of the same logic to another area, and that's one way that people's sort of beliefs can grow. When they see someone they agree with on one thing, start using the same logic in another area. That was one suggestion.
Sorry. This is kind of a question to
kind of entire panel, but regarding the YouTube, just what it takes to be a full-time YouTuber or part-time, I guess. You're constantly putting out this stuff, and you're very amenable to your audience, but also amenable to detractors. How do you psychologically, cope with such a thing? Because the internet's always there, and the social media's constantly buzzing in your ear. How do you make sure that in this age of information to sometimes disconnect and actually live your life personally? Because I'm not on YouTube or anything. I subscribe to people, but I don't make videos. I'm thinking of doing it, but I haven't done anything yet. But I'm planning. It's hard to stop thinking about this kind of stuff once you've got into that kind of sphere. What do you do?
Cool. I know that I experienced, after my red pill experience and that painful process of waking up to different ideas, I also went through a period of being very obsessive about it, making it the centre of conversation in my personal life as well. I managed to make a lot of enemies and ruin a lot of friendships in that process, but that was part of the learning for me of finding the balance between, the, for want of a better phrase, the safe space in which to talk about these ideas and create a platform to share them, but then to be able to unplug and spend time with my family without sitting there worrying about the election or worrying about, when's Jordan Peterson's next podcast coming out or whatever it is. So I think, again, it takes just willpower to unplug, and you've got to do it if you want to have a personal life. That's all I can say, is that I've learnt it over a period of time. Did you want to say something, Sven?
Just something really short, the antidote to fear is love of truth and love of principles, and if you're scared of the haters and stuff, you've just got to love the truth more and do it anyway, so stuff them,
I wanted to hijack the last couple of minutes of our Q&A and actually throw a question back out to Ezra, if I may. Would you mind coming up and just sharing just a few words for us, but also for anyone here who's considering getting into the alternative media, about what we were discussing earlier, about the ways to get from where we're at, to where you're at? Because you're a giant and we're up here talking alt media, and it feels wrong. Come up and please share.
Thanks for the kind words. We started the Rebel out of necessity, not out of choice. 200 of us worked together at a national news cable station that was shut down. So we either made a go of it or we would be unemployed. And we made a go of it. Now there's 42 of us, and looks like we got 4 or 5 new folks in Australia joining us, and we're growing. I'm going to try and keep this to 120 seconds.
Do it.
I would say that it's very difficult to make YouTube or social media pay enough to live off. And in fact, in the last 45 days, YouTube, which is my medium in particular, has demonetized what they call controversial or non-advertiser friendly content, which often means politically controversial or conservative things. So even people who were making a livable income, that's been cut 80% for many. So the answer is to find a secondary source of income through Patreon or PayPal, because living off of YouTube or Twitter, it's just not revenue friendly enough. We have put together a style of crowdfunding that I think has worked in Canada, and we're hoping it can work around the world. And that is by establishing a deep connection with our viewers based on giving them something they can't find anywhere else. Our unofficial motto is the other side of the story. So we don't try and do what someone else is doing. What's the point? We probably won't be as good, we certainly won't be as quick. But if we can find those things that there's a great hunger for in the market and give it to people, and then occasionally ask for very specific things to help us pay our bills, a new camera, a new microphone, a trip to a conference. We crowdfunded 4 people going to a nanny state conference in New Delhi. That was a $20,000 crowd fund. There's no way we could have paid for that with YouTube ads. I think my secret, and I'll close on this, the secret that's allowed us to grow without any external investment. We have no sugar daddy. We have no contributor who is even close to 1% of our revenue. We have thousands of individual people. The secret is to believe that you are fulfilling a market niche that has been ignored by the mainstream media, or the media political industrial complex, as I sometimes call it, the media party. And let me tell you about a moment, and I know when it happened. We started 26 months ago. We were in obscurity. People knew enough about us. They had contempt for us, the doxing or whatever. I mean, the derision, the hate, fine, that was nothing new to us. But the mainstream media that we were filling in the gaps for, they ignored us. They said, it's no big deal. These guys are just on YouTube. And then about 6 months ago, I thought, well, I'm just going to start publishing our stats, because we got some viewers now. We have 700,000 YouTube subscribers, 20 million views a month. That's not bad for Canada. And we started publishing our stats, and nothing changed for us. I mean, we are who we are. People watch us or they don't. They pay for us, thank God. It's managed us to grow. But here's what happened. The media party, the establishment cartel, who sneered at us or mocked us if our production value wasn't high. By the way, there's no correlation between production value and clicks. You can do something on your cell phone and it can get 5 million views. It's content that's king. The medium is secondary. When the mainstream media, who so sneered at us and despised us, saw that we were getting more views than their massive legacy media, our large national daily, weekly magazine was getting 3.5 million views online, and we were 2025. When we were 5-6 times bigger than them, something snapped in their mind. Because we were no different. They hated us the same before we published our stats as before. We were the same. But what happened in their mind is an existential crisis. Something broke, because they always thought, well, sure, there's kooky Levant and crazy so-and-so and extremist so-and-so, but we are the center and they are the other. Well, you can't call someone a fringe if they're 6 times bigger than you. and this isn't me bragging about our growth. Our growth we've plowed it all back into growing. But this is about the mindset of the existing media, who have been discredited in Brexit and Trump and Holland and France, and even if Le Pen doesn't win, the media surely must see that it's been discredited, but it will not. And so if you can see how the media has failed, and I think you can, if you can see how the Australian media has failed to talk about key issues that are important, of national identity and borders and immigration and integration and the role of Islam and separation of mosque and state and the role of the individual and the size of government and meritocracy, if you can see what the mainstream media cannot see, you will grow bigger than them, and one day they'll wake up and say, oh my God, how did it happen? And the answer is because you found that one niche out there of the forgotten market. That was a little more than 120 seconds. It was a little bit of a ramble, but it's encouragement.
All right, now I feel quite complete about our panel, and that concludes it. Thank you so much for coming. And please, I'll get that up on the screen as you leave. Please subscribe to our channels and come have a chat.
Just to remind you, we're going to